The galaxy was old. Empires had risen and fallen across its spiral arms for millions of years. Species had crawled from mud, learned to build fire, reached for the stars, and sometimes burned themselves to nothing. This was the way of things. The strong survived. The weak became dust. For 300 years, humanity had walked among the stars. They came late to the great game of civilization. When human ships first appeared at the edges of known space, the elder species looked upon them with mild curiosity. Here was another young race, crawling out of their small blue world, blinking at the vastness around them. The Galactic Assembly welcomed them as they welcomed all newcomers. They gave humanity a seat at the table, though it was a small seat, far from where the important decisions were made. Admiral Doan Kong stood on the bridge of the gentle dawn and watched the stars drift past. His ship was not impressive. It was small and gray and looked more like a cargo hauler than a military vessel. Foreign dignitaries who came aboard often asked where the real warship was hidden. Doan would smile and say nothing. He had served the United Terran Council for 40 years. In all that time, he had never fired a weapon in anger. Humanity's fleet was small. Their colonies numbered only 47, scattered across the outer rim where no one else wanted to live. They traded quietly. They studied the older races. They asked many questions and gave few answers. This was by design. The Galactic Assembly was made of 12 elder species. The youngest of them had traveled between stars for 8,000 years. The oldest could trace their history back 200,000 years. They had seen countless young races appear, struggle, and fade. Humanity was just another name on a very long list. The Vel Dominion was one of the 12. They were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Their empire stretched across 3,000 star systems. For 8,000 years, they had taken what they wanted. Smaller species paid tribute or faced destruction. This was simply how things worked. When the Vel Emperor, Lord Tarek, turned his attention to human space, no one was surprised. Humanity controlled several worlds rich in rare minerals. The Vel wanted those minerals. The solution was obvious. Lord Tarek sent his demand through official channels. Humanity would surrender 3 colony worlds. They would pay tribute every standard year. In exchange, the Vel would allow human ships to pass through contested space without being destroyed. This was generous, Lord Tarek believed. He was giving the humans a chance to survive. Ambassador Unipark received the demand in her office on the assembly station. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had represented humanity for 20 years. In all that time, she had never raised her voice. She read Lord Tarek's message 3 times, then set it aside. That evening, she sent a coded transmission to Earth. 3 days later, she stood before the Assembly's great chamber. The room was vast, built to hold thousands of delegates from across the galaxy. Light filtered down from crystal ceilings. The 12 elder species sat in their elevated positions. Looking down at the smaller races below, Lord Tarek was present, his 4 arms folded across his chest. He expected the human ambassador to beg. Perhaps she would cry. Young species often cried when faced with the reality of their situation. Unipark walked to the speaking platform. She wore simple clothes. She carried no notes. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "The United Terran Council has considered the Vel Dominion's request," she said. "We respectfully decline." Silence filled the chamber. Then Lord Tarek laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. Other delegates joined him. The idea was absurd. Humanity declining? With what army? With what fleet? "Little ambassador," Lord Tarek said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Perhaps you do not understand your situation. My armada could reach your homeworld in 30 days. Your entire species could be erased in 60. This is not a negotiation. This is mercy." Unipark did not flinch. "We understand our situation perfectly, Lord Tarek. Our answer remains the same." The laughter died. Something in her voice made the chamber grow cold. Lord Tarek leaned forward, studying the small human woman with new interest. "You are either very brave Or very foolish, he said. Perhaps, Una replied, but we are not afraid. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, whispers spread like fire through dry grass. What were the humans thinking? Did they have secret allies? Hidden weapons? Or had they simply lost their minds? Far from the assembly station, on the frozen moon of Europa, something stirred. The ice sheets above were 3 kilometers thick. Below them, in caverns that had been sealed for longer than any empire had existed, lights began to flicker. Machines that had slept for 12,000 years hummed back to life. Dust fell from metal surfaces that had not moved since before the Vel learned to make fire. Admiral Doan Kong received a single message on his secure channel. It contained only 2 words: begin preparations. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his face showed no emotion. Signal all ships, he said to his crew. We're going home. The gentle dawn turned toward Earth. Behind it, the stars continued their ancient dance. The galaxy did not know what was coming. The elder species continued their business, confident in their power, certain of their place in the universe. They had made a mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen only what humanity wanted them to see. A young species. A weak species. A species that could be pushed and threatened and conquered. They had not looked deeper. They had not asked the right questions. They had not wondered why humanity's ships were so plain, why their weapons were so basic, why they seemed content to sit in the shadows while others built empires. The answer was simple. Humanity was waiting. They had been waiting for 300 years. And now, at last, the waiting was almost over. In the frozen depths of Europa, the ancient warships began to wake. The Vel Armada gathered at the edge of human space like storm clouds before a hurricane. 2,000 warships hung in the darkness, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had burned worlds to ash. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction. Built by a species that had perfected war over 8,000 years, Lord Tarek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. Through the viewing windows, he could see his fleet stretching into the distance. It was a beautiful sight. Humanity would see it too, very soon, and they would understand their mistake. News of the coming war spread across the galaxy. Broadcasts showed the Vel Armada in all its terrible glory. Analysts predicted humanity's extinction within a standard week. Some said it would take only 3 days. The elder species watched with mild interest. This was entertainment to them. A young race had been foolish, and now they would pay the price. On Earth, the sky was blue and the birds were singing. People walked through parks and sat in cafes. Children played in schoolyards. To an outside observer, it looked like a world in denial. The end was coming, and the humans seemed not to care. But beneath the surface, something very different was happening. President Hannah Cho sat in the underground command center beneath the old city of Seoul. Around her, screens showed data from across human space, supply movements, population transfers, fleet positions. Everything was proceeding according to plan. How long until the keepers complete their preparations? She asked. General Taiho Lim checked his tablet. 72 hours. The awakening protocols are on schedule. All vessels will be ready before the Vel arrive. Hannah nodded. She was 63 years old. Her hair was white, her face lined with age. She had known this day might come since she was a child. Her grandmother had told her stories about the ancient ships sleeping beneath the ice. Her mother had shown her the secret documents passed down through generations. Now the burden was hers. And the civilians? She asked, relocated to designated shelters. We told them it was a drill. They believed us. Taiho paused. They trust us. I know, Hannah said quietly. I hope we deserve that trust. Across human space, the same scene repeated itself. Families moved to underground bunkers that had been built decades ago for this exact purpose. Supply chains shifted without explanation. Ships that had never been registered in any database began moving through hidden channels. To the Vel observers watching from afar, it looked like chaos. Like panic, it was neither. On Mars, in a vault buried deep beneath the red soil. Dr. Yunji Essio walked through corridors that few living humans had ever seen. The walls were not made of any material she could identify. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered every surface. Written in a language that predated human civilization, she had spent her entire career studying these artifacts, 30 years of her life given to understanding the impossible things hidden in this place. And still, she felt like a child trying to read a book written for gods. Her assistant, a young man named Jinho, walked beside her. His eyes were wide with wonder. "Is it true?" he asked. "Are they really waking up?" Yunji stopped at a massive door. It was 50 meters tall, made of the same strange dark material as the walls. As she watched, lines of soft blue light began to trace across its surface. "Yes," she said. "After 12,000 years, they are finally waking up." The door began to open. Behind it, something vast moved in the darkness, far away. Aboard the Gentle Dawn, Admiral Donkong reviewed the ancient protocols one more time. Every commander in the human fleet had memorized them. They had trained for this moment since childhood, as had their parents before them. The protocols were simple: defend, protect, never conquer, never destroy more than necessary. The power they would soon command was too great for anger, too terrible for revenge. Admiral, his communications officer, said, "We're receiving a transmission from the assembly. They want to know if we've changed our minds." Doan almost smiled. "Tell them our position remains unchanged. They're offering to negotiate. They say the Vel might accept reduced tribute. Sir, with respect, they're trying to help us. They think we're going to die." Doan turned to face his crew. They were young, most of them. They had grown up hearing the stories, learning the secrets. But hearing was not the same as seeing. Soon, they would see. Soon, everyone would see. "We are not going to die," he said. "We are going to do something far more difficult. We are going to show the galaxy who we really are. And then we will have to live with what comes next." The crew fell silent. They understood. This was not a victory they were approaching. It was a revelation. And revelations once made could never be taken back. On Europa, the ice began to crack. Great fissures spread across the frozen surface, kilometers long and hundreds of meters deep. Observation satellites detected massive energy readings from below. Scientists across the galaxy scrambled to understand what was happening. Was it a natural phenomenon? A volcanic event? Some kind of weapon? None of them guessed the truth. In the caverns below, ships that had slept since before human history began to rise. Their engines, silent for 12,000 years, roared back to life. Their weapon systems, designed by minds far beyond human understanding, powered up for the first time since the ancients had sailed the stars. There were 17 of them. 17 vessels hidden across human space. On Luna, in the asteroid fields that humanity had claimed for mining operations, each one was a weapon beyond imagining. Each one was older than every empire the galaxy had ever known. And above them, 2,000 Vel warships sailed toward their doom. Lord Tarek stood on his bridge, confident in his power, certain of his victory. He did not know what was coming. He could not know. In all the galaxy's long history, nothing like this had ever happened before. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break. The Vel Armada crossed into human space on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. 2,000 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons hot, their crews eager for battle. Lord Tarek had promised them glory. He had promised them the riches of human worlds. They believed him. The first thing they noticed was the silence. There were no distress signals screaming across the void. No evacuation fleets fleeing toward distant stars. No desperate messages begging for mercy. Human space was quiet, peaceful, almost empty. Lord Tarek frowned. This was wrong. Young species always panicked when faced with destruction. They cried and screamed and ran. They did not simply wait in silence. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find their fleet. His sensor officers obeyed. Minutes passed. Their faces grew confused. Lord, one of them said, "We're detecting the human military vessels. They're just sitting there. 47 ships gathered near Earth. They're not moving." 47 ships? Lord Tarek laughed. Against 2,000? They've gone mad. He ordered his armada forward. Whatever game the humans were playing, it would end soon. Their tiny fleet would be crushed. Their worlds would burn. And Lord Tarek would add another conquest to his long list of victories. Then the readings began. It started at 17 points, across human space. Massive gravitational distortions rippled through the fabric of reality. Energy signatures blazed into existence, unlike anything in the Assembly's databases. The numbers made no sense. They were too large, too powerful. The instruments had to be malfunctioning. What is happening? Lord Tarek demanded. No one could answer. On Europa, the ice shattered. Great chunks of frozen water, some as large as mountains, flew into the void as something rose from below. The watching satellites captured everything. The galaxy would see this moment replayed billions of times in the years to come. They would never forget it. The ship that emerged was black. Not painted black, but truly black, as if it absorbed all light that touched it. It was massive beyond reason. 40 kilometers long, 10 kilometers wide. Its design was alien, strange, built according to principles no living species understood. It moved with terrible grace. Rising from the ice like a god waking from a long dream, across human space, similar scenes unfolded. On Luna, 3 vessels burst from underground caverns that had been sealed for millennia. In the asteroid fields, ships emerged from rocks that everyone had thought were just dead stone. 17 vessels in total. 17 nightmares made real. The Vel sensor officers stared at their screens. Some of them began to pray. Others simply wept. They had trained their entire lives for war. They had never trained for this. Admiral Dohan Kong's voice crackled across all frequencies. It reached the Vel Armada. It reached the assembly station. It reached every corner of the galaxy that had ears to hear. "To the Vel Dominion and all who bear witness," said his voice calm and clear, "what you see are the inheritor vessels. They were built by those who came before, by a species so old that their empire rose and fell before your ancestors learned to walk. Humanity did not find these ships. We did not steal them. We were chosen to guard them. We are the keepers," silence answered him. The galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Una Park's transmission followed. She stood in the assembly chamber, surrounded by the delegates of the elder species. Their faces showed shock, fear, disbelief. "We never wanted this," she said. "We joined your assembly as students, hoping to learn and grow alongside you in peace. For 300 years, we asked only to be left alone, but you would not let us. You saw our humility as weakness. You saw our patience as fear. You were wrong." On his bridge, Lord Tarek watched the impossible ships move into formation. The largest one, the vessel from Europa, positioned itself directly between his armada and Earth. It hung there like a black star, silent and waiting. "Fire," Lord Tarek whispered. His officers hesitated. "Fire," he screamed. The Vel Armada unleashed everything it had. Thousands of weapons blazed across the void. Missiles and energy beams and kinetic rounds, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The barrage struck the black ship's shields. Nothing happened. The weapons splashed against an invisible barrier, like water against stone. The shields did not flicker. They did not strain. They simply absorbed the attack as if it were nothing, as if it were less than nothing. Lord Tarek felt something he had not felt in 800 years. He felt afraid. On the bridge of the black ship, designated Silent Epoch, Commander Mingy Han watched the attack fail. She was young, only 32, but she had trained for this her entire life. Her family had been keepers for 9 generations. The responsibility weighed on her like a mountain. "They stopped," her tactical officer reported. "The Vel have ceased firing," Mingy nodded. "Open a channel." Her voice reached the Vel flagship. "Lord Tarek, you have attacked us. Under the protocols of the ancients, we would be justified in destroying your entire fleet. Every ship, every soul. We have the power to do this." "You know we do?" Lord Tarek said nothing. His hands trembled. "But we choose mercy," Minji continued. "You have 1 hour to withdraw from human space. If you leave, you will live. If you stay, you will die. This is not a negotiation. This is not a trick. This is simply the truth." The transmission ended. The galaxy watched. The Vel Armada hung in space, 2,000 ships facing 17, 2,000 modern weapons against power from before time began. Lord Tarek looked at the black ships. He looked at his fleet. He thought about glory and conquest and all the things he had promised. Then he thought about dying, my lord. His second-in-command asked, "What are your orders?" Lord Tarek was 8,000 years old. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had crushed rebellions and burned civilizations. He had never retreated, not once, not ever. But he had also never faced anything like this. "Signal the fleet," he said, his voice hollow. "We... ... He could not finish the sentence. Pride choked him. The hour began to count down, and the galaxy waited to see what would happen next. The hour passed slowly. Across the galaxy, billions watched their screens. They saw the Vel Armada hanging in space, 2,000 ships facing the impossible black vessels that humanity had hidden for so long. They saw Lord Tarek's flagship at the center of his fleet, silent and still. On the assembly station, the elder species sat frozen in their seats. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had believed themselves masters of all they surveyed. Now, they understood how wrong they had been. The hour ended. Commander Minji Han opened a channel one final time. "Lord Tarek, your time has passed. Will you withdraw?" The Vel Emperor's voice came back, hard and bitter. "The Vel Dominion does not run. We do not bow to children playing with toys they do not understand. If you wish to destroy us, then destroy us. But we will not flee." Minji closed her eyes for a moment. She had hoped it would not come to this. She had prayed in her own way that the Vel would choose wisdom over pride. But some choices cannot be made for others. "So be it," she said. The battle began. It was not a battle. Not really. A battle implies two sides with some chance of victory. This was something else entirely. This was a lesson written in fire and death. The silent epoch moved first. It did not accelerate like a normal ship. It simply shifted, appearing kilometers away from its original position in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Before the Vel could react, beams of concentrated darkness lanced out from its weapons. The beams passed through Vel shields as if they did not exist. The first 3 destroyers simply vanished. There were no explosions, no debris, no escape pods. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone, erased from existence by power that operated on principles no modern species could comprehend. Lord Tarek screamed orders. His fleet scattered, trying to find some formation that might offer protection. There was none. Captain Sun Wu Beak commanded one of the smaller inheritor vessels, a frigate only 3 kilometers long. He had trained for this moment since he was old enough to walk. His parents had trained before him, and their parents before them. 30 generations of his family had prepared for a day they hoped would never come. "Minimal force," he reminded his crew. "We end the battle, not the species. Target weapons and engines only when possible." Ships swept through the Vel formation like a hawk among pigeons. Precise beams disabled battle cruisers with surgical strikes. Gravity wells pulled missile barrages off course, sending them spinning harmlessly into the void. When Vel fighters swarmed toward him, he did not destroy them. He simply shut down their systems with pulses of strange energy, leaving them drifting and helpless but alive. Not all the keepers were so gentle. The silent epoch carved a path of destruction through the heart of the Vel Armada. Commander Minji Han targeted only the largest vessels, only those that posed the greatest threat. But when she fired, nothing survived. Dreadnoughts that had taken decades to build disappeared in instants. Command ships that had led fleets for centuries became nothing but fading energy signatures. Lord Tarek watched his empire's pride torn apart. Half his fleet was gone in the first 5 minutes. The inheritor vessels moved among his ships like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking from angles that should have been impossible. His weapons could not touch them. His shields meant nothing. His 8,000 years of military experience was worthless. Fall back? He finally screamed. All ships fall back. But it was too late for many of them. The Vel scattered in every direction, abandoning formation, abandoning each other. Some made it to the edge of the system and fled into faster-than-light travel. Others were not so lucky. 11 minutes after it began, battle ended. The final count would be remembered for millennia. 1,400 Vel warships destroyed or disabled. 600 more fled in retreat, broadcasting surrender on every channel. Not a single inheritor vessel was damaged. Not a single human life was lost. Lord Tarek's flagship drifted alone in the debris field. Its weapons were melted slag. Its engines were dark. But its bridge still had power, and Lord Tarek still lived. Commander Mingi Han had ordered him spared. Why? Lord Tarek asked when the human woman's face appeared on his screen. Why did you not kill me? Because killing you would be easy, Mingi replied. Living with what happened here today will be much harder. You will go back to your people. You will tell them what you saw. And you will spend the rest of your very long life knowing that you led your fleet to destruction because of your pride. The channel closed. Lord Tarek sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of the warriors he had led to death. On Earth, in the underground command center, General Taiho Lim watched the battle's end. Beside him, Dr. Yunji Essio stood with tears streaming down her face. We did it, Taiho said quietly. We won, did we? Yunji asked. Look at what we did. Look at how many died. We called ourselves Keepers, Guardians of Peace. And now we've shown the galaxy that we command the greatest weapons ever built. Taiho had no answer. She was right. They had won the battle. But something else had been lost today. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. They would never trust them. Never feel safe around them. The secret they had kept for 12,000 years was out. And there was no putting it back. Above Earth, the silent epoch took its position among the stars. It hung there like a silent promise, or perhaps a threat. The other inheritor vessels spread out across human space, visible now to anyone with a telescope. They would never be hidden again. Commander Minji Han looked out at the stars from her bridge. She thought about her ancestors, all the generations who had carried this burden in secret. She thought about her children, who would grow up in a galaxy that feared humanity. What do we do now? Her first officer asked. Minji did not answer immediately. The question was too big. The future was too uncertain. Finally, she spoke. We do what we have always done. We keep watch. We protect. And we try to be worthy of the trust that was placed in us so long ago, was all she could offer. It would have to be enough. The Galactic Assembly met in emergency session for the first time in 400 years. The great chamber was packed with delegates from every known species. Fear hung in the air like smoke. The 12 elder species sat in their elevated positions, but they no longer looked down at anyone. Their eyes were fixed on the human delegation. Ambassador Unipark walked to the speaking platform. She was 71 years old now. Her hair was white as snow, her face lined with age and wisdom. She had spent her entire career building bridges between species. Now, she would try to build the most important bridge of all. I know you are afraid, she began. I know you have questions. You deserve answers. So I will tell you everything. She told them about the ancients 12,000 years ago. Long before the oldest elder species learned to make fire, a civilization had ruled the galaxy. They called themselves simply the First. They had traveled between stars when the universe was young. They had built wonders that modern science could not explain. They had lived for millions of years. But even they were not immortal. Something was coming. Something from beyond the galaxy, from the dark spaces between stars where nothing should exist. The first knew they could not stop it. They knew their time was ending, so they made a choice. They built ships. 17 vessels, each one carrying the sum of their knowledge, their power, their hope. They hid these ships across a small blue world on the galaxy's outer rim. And they waited for the inhabitants of that world to evolve. When humanity crawled from the caves and learned to build cities, the first were already gone. But they had left a message. They had left instructions. And they had left the responsibility. We were chosen, Una said. Not because we were special. Not because we were better than any other species. We were chosen because we were there. Because we survived. Because when the first looked into the future, they saw that one day we might be worthy of the trust they placed in us. The chamber was silent. The elder species listened with expressions of shock and wonder. For 12,000 years we kept the secret. We hid the ships. We passed the knowledge from generation to generation. We joined your assembly as students because we wanted to learn. We wanted to understand the galaxy we were sworn to protect. We never sought power. We never wanted war. Yuna's voice grew heavy with sorrow. But we also made a promise. If any species faced extinction through no fault of their own, we would defend them. If any power tried to conquer the galaxy through force, we would stop them. The ships are not weapons of empire. They are shields against darkness. Admiral Doan Kong stepped forward to address the military implications. His voice was steady and calm. The inheritor vessels will never be used for conquest. They will never be sold or traded. They will never fire first. But if any species faces destruction at the hands of another, they may petition humanity for protection. We will answer. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked hopeful. Others looked suspicious. Trust, once lost, is not easily rebuilt. President Hannah Cho delivered the final words. She was old now, her body weak, but her voice carried across the chamber like a bell. We are not your rulers, she said. We are not your gods. We do not want your worship or your fear. We are simply what we have always been. Keepers of what came before. Guardians of what comes next. We ask only that you give us the chance to prove ourselves worthy of your trust. The session ended. The galaxy began to change. In the centuries that followed, the transformation was slow but steady. The Vel Dominion collapsed within 50 years. Without military dominance, their empire crumbled. New governments rose from the ruins, democratic councils that ruled by consent rather than force. Wars of conquest became rare. When aggressive powers threatened smaller species, they knew humanity might intervene. The inheritor vessels never fired again after the Vel War, but their presence was enough. Their shadow fell across every negotiation, every treaty, every declaration of war that was never made. Humanity changed too. They remained part of the assembly, no longer students but not quite teachers either. They shared knowledge freely. They helped younger species grow. They answered calls for aid without asking for payment. Some species never trusted them. Some whispered that humanity was simply waiting, building towards some dark purpose that would only reveal itself in time. But most came to accept the strange role that fate had given these quiet people from a small blue world 300 years after the Vel War. A young girl named Nari Moon visited the Memorial of Unveiling. It was built on the shore of a great ocean on Earth, where the waves crashed against rocks that had stood for millions of years. At the center of the memorial, a holographic display showed the silent epoch rising from the ice of Europa. Nari was 7 years old. She had dark hair and bright eyes, and more questions than anyone could answer. Her grandmother walked beside her, moving slowly with the help of a cane. The grandmother's name was Bora Moon. She was 123 years old, kept alive by medical technology that would have seemed like magic to her ancestors. In her youth, she had served as a captain aboard one of the inheritor frigates during the Vel War. She had been 25 years old when she watched Lord Tarek's fleet scatter and flee. Grandmother, Nari said, staring up at the hologram, will we ever have to fight again? Bora looked at the image of the ancient ship. She thought about all the years that had passed. All the changes she had seen, all the hopes and fears that had filled her long life. Perhaps she said, "The universe is very big, and we do not know everything that lives in it." The first warned us that something was coming, something from the darkness beyond the stars. Maybe it will come in your lifetime. Maybe it will come 1,000 years from now. Maybe it will never come at all. She put her hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. But whatever happens, we will be ready. We have been ready for 12,000 years. That is what it means to be a keeper. We watch. We wait. We protect. And we never forget. Nari looked up at her grandmother with serious eyes. "Will I be a keeper too?" Bora smiled. It was a warm smile, full of love and pride and just a little sadness. "If you want to be," she said, "the choice is always yours." They stood together in the fading light, the old woman and the young girl, watching the holographic ship rise over and over again. Behind them, the sun set over the ocean. Above them, the stars began to appear, one by one, filling the sky with ancient light. Somewhere out there in the dark spaces between galaxies, something was waiting. But not today. Not yet. Today, the galaxy was at peace. And that was enough.